So good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is Continuing Professional Education Services monthly hot topic. And if you haven't changed your calendar yet, today is October 1st. It is the start of the fourth quarter of 2021. It is unbelievable. I'm still waiting for summer to start. So it is unbelievable. But we're excited to do this. Continuing Professional Education does hot topics at least once a month. My partner, George Berkowitz, and I, who is on the call today, and our Director of Operations, Julianne Masago, welcome you here this morning. This is, as I said to those who were in the room, if you can, if you can do me a few favors for the operation of today. One is keep yourself muted at the, if there's an opportunity to unmute you, we'll let you know. We will take Q&A through the chat. So make sure, I always ask people to put their name as well as the company they're with in the chat, just so we can make sure that you can communicate with us and I can see that. As far as your camera goes, that is your personal choice. If you'd like to turn it on, turn it off, however you want to do that, you have control of that. And let's just all make sure that we're appropriate in everything that we're doing and saying, and that we are here today to work together and to learn. As I said to start, this is recorded and it will be placed on the CPES.NJ.com website, probably on Monday. You can always view that and share that with anybody you'd like to. I'm excited this morning. I think this is a good opportunity, especially in the current climate that we are working in, with deadlines approaching, with LSRP submitting reports, with all the work that we do, both on the PR/CR side as well as LSRPs. I am very happy that Lynne Mitchell, who is the Assistant Director of the Remediation Review Element at the, I always say Site Remediation, but it's actually Site Remediation and Waste Management Program at DEP, has agreed to join us this morning and answer some questions, talk about some things that are going on in her world, and give us her time over the next hour, which I know her time is very pressing and very important. And it is, sometimes she gets called into meetings, and she told me yesterday she doesn't like to be late for meetings, especially when the boss is calling. So I do appreciate Lynne joining us today. So good morning, Lynne.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and Lynne and I have talked already, and we put together some things that we thought would be hot topics. So we're going to start there. If you do have questions, we would ask you put them in the chat, and we're going to try to get to all the questions we can today. But I thought it was important first, as I said before, Lynne and I have probably worked together. I don't know, that site might have been 25, 30 years ago, even though we're both still in our 20s. You've kind of, elevated yourself, worked your way through the ranks of assistant director. But I think it's important. Tell us a little about yourself, about who you are, what you've done, and where you've been through DEP years.
So I started at the department as an intern while I was at Rutgers. So, and then full-time, I started in the site remediation program, which was hazardous waste at the time. I worked in case management, working on coal gas sites. I then moved to the enforcement group within case management, then went to the Bureau of ECRA Applicability and Compliance. Yes, that's how old I am. I then moved to ECRA Initial Notice. I then became the supervisor of the UST Initial Notice section. Then went out to the field office and spent many years looking at many different types of sites, former gas stations, ISRA sites, as well as homeowner sites and everything in between. We moved back from the field office, got moved back into Trenton. I became a section chief and then moved from field operations to the Bureau of Remedial Action Permitting. Was in charge of that bureau for a couple of months and then got the promotion to assistant director.
Okay, very good. I actually did not know that you were, I'm not going to ask you what year it was. You were an intern at the department, but yep. I was also an intern at the department when I was at Rutgers. And
oh wow.
Yep. I always say my claim to fame was I shared a cubicle with Irene Kropp.
Oh wow. Now I was in the Bureau of Water Quality Standards and Analysis.
Yeah, I worked on the Water Watch program and started that with Judy Morgan, and many years ago. But I learned really government from Irene Kropp and how you basically control people. She was very good at that. But no, seriously, I love Irene. So in your current position as the assistant director in the remediation review element, what groups do you oversee? Who's basically working with you? Who do you supervise? And I always like to say too is people always say, if you have a problem, elevate. Okay. But, your group, tell us a little about them and how the process works.
So the two bureaus that report to me are the Bureau of Remedial Action Permitting and the Bureau of Inspection and Review. So most of the cases in the site remediation and waste management program, in the site remediation side, will go through the two bureaus that work for me. So I have impact over a lot of cases. So that's Atwood Davis in the Bureau of Inspection and Review, and Gary Sanderson in the Bureau of Remedial Action Permitting.
I would probably say you have your hands on every case.
There are a few that I don't, that are in case management or in the publicly funded side, or in the field office. A lot of homeowner cases I don't touch, but there are most of them I do.
That's a good point. Good point. So let's dig in. Let's jump right in, and right off the top, and probably not where we should start, but let's start there. If there was, because I want to make sure we have enough time. If there was one thought that you want to get out to the regulated community, to the LSRPs, whether it be misconceptions, biggest error, what would that be? And you want to make sure that point's made today.
So although I have said this before, I think it really warrants repeating, and it's regarding documenting your professional judgment. I have been saying this since I started in the Bureau of Remedial Action Permitting. It's important that the LSRPs document what they're thinking, why they're thinking it. We read that information. It's important that we have this information. A lot of our deficiencies are because we don't know what you're thinking. And when we ask you what you're thinking, we get that information, and then everything is okay in both bureaus. If you can't put in writing why your professional judgment is appropriate, if you can't defend why you didn't delineate, why you didn't sample, why you didn't analyze for something, why you didn't do something in accordance with the tech regs, and you can't justify it in writing, chances are we're not going to approve it, so please don't submit it. So put it down. And I think sometimes what happens, I know with me, when I write, I find that what I write down makes perfect sense to me, but doesn't make sense to somebody else who's not as familiar with the subject. Just happened yesterday to me, which is why I was thinking about it. So ask somebody else to look at it. Ask, your coworker, if it doesn't make sense to them, they're not familiar with the case. If they have questions, we're going to have the same questions.
And I know that the department recently updated the permit, the forms. Okay.
Yes.
And I know that one of the big things was, now it kind of directs the department to where it is in the report.
Yeah, in our RAP stakeholder group, one of the things that we discussed was that we have permit applications and we have, RARs that are thousands upon thousands of pages, and people attach other documents, and they ask us, and we can't find where the professional judgment is. And then it may not be there, or it may be there and we just can't find it. And the LSRPs in the room were like, well, we put it in there, and but we don't know where. And after a couple of hours, we stopped looking. So if it doesn't have a big heading on it saying professional judgment below, we don't know. So we put on the forms for the remedial action permit applications for soil and groundwater. We tell us where on page what, what part of your document, what section, what page, so that we know how to find it, which has made it easier, but not everybody understands what we're asking for there.
I was going to ask you if you have found it to be easier. It's still new. It hasn't really taken off. But I guess, and the other thing too is when people are using their professional judgment as LSRPs and submitting those documents into the department, you know, the more defensibility they use, the more lines of evidence, I'm assuming the better you're going to understand and be able to support that.
Absolutely. I mean, if we understand what we want is for our record to be complete. It's not that, as long as your professional judgment is reasoned and logical and based on facts, not, you know, made up theorems, but, you know, actual things, we will accept your professional judgment. You know, you can't say, I'm not going to investigate receptors because in my professional judgment, I don't need to. That won't get approved. But if your professional judgment is, I did this, this, and that because I couldn't do X, Y, and Z, we approve it. That's your judgment.
Right. And your professional judgment could come into play with deviation of guidance, varying from rules, but also just the way that you may have performed your remediation.
Absolutely. From every part of it, as long as we understand what you're thinking and you can defend it based on science, it will get approved. We might ask questions because we don't understand, but once we understand it, most of the time we approve the professional judgment that has been documented. Our deficiencies are typically because we don't understand what the LSRP is submitting in their applications.
And with you mentioned deficiencies, okay, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But really, 2009, 2010 changed the world of how documents are reviewed and inspected at the department. And I know as an LSRP myself, I've gotten notice of technical deficiencies. I guess the question is how quick, how does the process work from the inspector reviewer to that technical deficiency, understanding the fact they can't pick a phone up and call everybody, but there's got to be a process and how they look at things. And when those technical deficiencies come out, we usually get, depending upon it, either 7 days, 14 days, or 30 days. How is that time frame chosen?
So 2 different bureaus handle things 2 different ways, trying to get them to be a little bit more consistent. But the idea is, if we think you can fix it and address our concern, we give you 30 days. If we don't, if you didn't investigate a receptor, if you didn't sample your sentinel well for 5 years, which we just had one of those in BRAP, we give you 7 days, because there's no way you're going to meet our timeframes in 30 days. If you have to go, basically, if you have to go back out and sample, you're not getting a 30-day letter, you're getting a 7-day, and we're going to ask you in that 7-day to withdraw your document, because there's no way you're going to comply with completing the document within a 30-day period.
And you just said something, so you're working right now on consistency between the programs. Now, does everybody, I will tell you, my vision that I always think of is everybody has like a form in front of them, and they go down the form to make sure everything's complete, and that's how they do the review. Is that some way it works?
So, not at all.
Oh.
So
that's a good answer.
Sorry. The Bureau of Inspection and Review, there are inspectors in that document, in that bureau. They inspect the forms. They check off, depending on how you answer certain questions, it would trigger an additional review. The Bureau of Inspection and Review now is divided into different groups. There's a supervisor who deals with receptors. There's a supervisor who deals with soils, a supervisor who deals with groundwater, and we separate out so that each area each reviewer has gained expertise in that area. The reviewers are the ones who dig deeper into the document. They actually open the document up and review their component that they're supposed to be reviewing. There are times when we do a complete review of the entire report, but that is the exception to the rule.
Okay. Okay.
The Bureau of Remedial Action Permitting, they always open the document. They look at the forms and open the document. They do both. Inspection and review, we have inspectors who look at the forms. They are making sure that the data in the system is correct. They make sure that the LSRP reference the correct areas of concern, that there's not glaring administrative issues, and they're the ones who determine what reviews get done.
And I mean, quick question, and I don't think Mark's on the call. So, you've been doing this a long time. Is this the best that things have worked in your opinion over the years?
I believe I have made positive changes in both the Bureau of Inspection and Review and the Bureau of Remedial Action Permitting. We're having back in January and February, we received December, January, February, we received numerous permit applications that kind of, and most of them were not very good. Some of them were grossly deficient, is the word we're using, but that kind of messed up our timeframes because we got triple, quadruple the amounts of normal permits within a short period of time.
Okay. And I know you may not want to answer this or disclose this, but I'll ask the question. Is there internal timeframes that you give your staff to get things turned around? And then are there on the outside, are there expectations if we submit a document in 2021 that there's a time frame we may hear back based upon what milestone that might be?
So with the Bureau of Inspection Review, you should never wait to hear back from them. You're just supposed to, you submit your document and go forward. I feel more than comfortable saying that.
Yep.
And the only time frame we have is the 3-year time frame regarding for the RAOs, and we try to get all of our reviews done before that 3-year window expires. Regarding Bureau of Remedial Action Permitting, when I started, that group was given 120 days to try to, as a goal, to have all the reviews done. It's not really working with that onslaught that we got back in December, January, and February. As I said, that increased the amount of cases we had, plus the quality of the work has slowed down their process.
Okay. I want to shift a little bit for a second here. So, I think it was May 17th, 2021. We had the new remediation, the amended remediation standards. We had Barry Frasco on, I don't know, last month. Barry's been doing the circuit, and actually it's October 1st. Barry's officially retired.
He is. It's a very, very sad day.
Oh man, I gotta call him. That's life has changed at the DEP. He was a fixture.
Absolutely.
And I mean, without giving away secrets, do you know who's replacing him?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Figure I'd ask. So amended remediation standards came in. We're all, when I say we, the LSRP world, the PRCRs, we've gotten some extensions on timeframes because of executive orders, all these different things. And I know myself, every day we're talking to clients and trying to work everything out. Can we go over real quick, so there's a clear understanding of everybody here, the phase-in procedures for the sites, the areas of concern, and how they play into the final remediation documents?
I can give you answers on how the remediation standards impact the permits that are out there. I would refer everybody to the FAQs that were posted. I believe there are 2 sets of them. One was just recently posted this week regarding all of the questions on there. If I would have to answer any more questions, I would just be reading them off of the FAQs, because this is not my area of expertise. That was Barry's. But I can discuss the issue regarding the permit process and the statement that we made regarding the 6-month phase-in period for sites that have to have an order of magnitude issue, and they have a permit in-house and they need the permit approved so they can issue the RAO by November 17th. So I can discuss that. And thank you for posting the link to the FAQs.
Yeah, I just put that up there for everybody. I know it came out the other day. It's kind of on the site, on the site remediation website. It's on the remediation standards. It's a little tough, but that's the link directly to it if anybody is interested. And yeah, if you can hit that, because that's, there's 2 avenues that I see is, there is this little window of opportunity. If you need to issue an REO, if you need to get a permit to issue the REO by November 17th, and then we'll kind of segue into what happens for next year. But if you can talk about that first one, that's the most important one right now.
So we understand that there were, I believe, 6 compounds that had an order of magnitude that were changed by an order of magnitude. The one that seems to be of most concern is ethylbenzene. And we understand that it matters to people with ethylbenzene as a contaminant that they get their RAO issued by November 17th at the end of that phase-in period. We understand the concern. So I went out on the limb and said, we need some time to work on it. So we said, you have to get it into us by October 17th. And if your permit application is complete and you submit it by October 17th, and you send an email to the bureau chief, Gary Sanderson, by October, when you submit it by October 17th, you email Gary by that same time frame and let him know that this has been submitted, because we can't prioritize what we don't know. And we will review and approve the permits, assuming they are approvable. If they are not approvable, when we get them, we will not be issuing the permit by November 17th. We will be working on the ones that we can. And I can tell you that, although I'm jumping ahead a little bit, the most common deficiency for more than 50% of soil permits that are submitted, the most common deficiency is that the financial assurance uses the RFS form and not the financial assurance form. So it's invalid because it cites the wrong regulatory authority or statutory authority. Go back and watch the training that we did on the bicerts that we just came out. Mike Infanger talked about the financial assurance. If you don't submit it correctly, then in that proper format, we cannot approve it. And if you have to get a new financial mechanism from the bank, it's not happening in 30 days.
16 days.
Well, if you're not happy, if you don't have it correct when we review it, you're not going to get it to us within that month.
Right.
So it's very important that that financial mechanism is accurate.
And to be clear, so you're talking about 2 different facts. So one is your document has to be administratively complete. Okay. So your form, your deed notice, all of these things have to be in place in the next 16 days. If you haven't done it already, the fee is being paid. All of those things, that has to be good. And then the flip side to it is the technical end. And
Correct.
that'll be, and so you're confident though, I mean, if you can, I mean, have you seen a lot of these so far?
We've seen 0.
Seen
Gary
0.
Sanderson has not been contacted as of yet that he has one of these permit applications have been submitted that need to be reviewed by November 17th.
Okay. I know we talked the other day, we don't think it's a large population, but we do think there are some out there.
I do think there's some out there. I made this commitment because I don't think that there are going to be that many. But if needed, we are, most of the groundwater reviewers have reviewed soil permits in the past, so I can adjust the workload and how people are doing it, and we can get this done.
Okay. And then the other side is, there's some regulatory mandatory timeframes that have been extended to May 7th, 2022. In that scenario, in that process, you're going to start, if you haven't already, you're going to be getting a lot of remedial action permits because people have remedial action deadlines for that. We kind of started that at the end of 2020 to 2021. People should be picking up that again. Are you seeing them starting to come in? Are you seeing those trickles? And how are those documents looking?
The ones that we got 2020, 2021, we're not looking very good. We got a lot of them at that point. Some of them are, as I said earlier, grossly deficient. We have not seen the new ones come in yet. I implore everybody who is listening, if you can't justify what you're submitting to us, please don't submit it. Ask for an extension. Like, it's a waste of our time. It's a waste of your client's money. Ask for an extension and just go that route. It's not, you're eventually going to end up in the same place. So just go there to start with. We're not going to approve something that's not approvable.
Right, right. And as far as extensions goes, if it's a regulatory time frame, the LSRP submits that 30 days prior to that deadline. If it's a mandatory time frame, you're looking at 60 days submitted to the department for approval.
Right. And we asked that you don't submit your extension request more than 6 months beforehand. So November will be the time when you can start submitting it.
Yeah. I'd have to do the math on my fingers and toes to figure out 6 months before. I know, we had this conversation last year. Do you anticipate again that you're still going to see a lot of mandatory timeframe requests, extensions?
That's outside of my purview, but I hope that we see the extension request rather than submitting documents that are not approvable, that are not, permit applications that are not approvable. We don't approve other documents.
Right. Yeah. And I think that would be the best thing in everybody's interest. I think it goes flows about better. So let's dive into, we've kind of talked a little bit about it, but let's dive into it. So LSRPs on behalf of PRCRs, submit milestone reports. We call them preliminary assessments, site investigations, remedial action permits. There's all these different things. And then we get comments back and we review the comments. And, how are you seeing them addressed? It appears, again, sometimes we don't have to necessarily respond immediately. We just do it in the next milestone report. Are you seeing that this is working, and are you seeing the completeness of documents getting better when that's getting done?
We do see that if the issue that the inspector reviewer noted, they tell you that you can refer it, that it can go on to the next phase and to be addressed. We are finding that people are addressing what we tell them that they need to address. Do I see it getting better? I can't make that assessment. There's just so many of them that come in. To tie the comments back to a particular LSRP, seeing if they have gotten better, I don't have that data.
Well, I didn't ask that question. I don't want to know that.
No, but I don't know if it's
Yeah.
getting better as individually, as a whole, we are still doing it. So as a whole, it's still an issue. People are missing things or not documenting things, and but they are getting them in the later phases.
Okay. Do you find that since if I do an SI report and I submit it, and then I may get some comments back that I need to correct in the RI, and then the RI inspector reviewer is different than the person who saw the SI, how is that communication and how is that review done? So that we don't have, when it comes to the RA time, it doesn't go back to the SI side. How does that work?
So there are inspectors who review the remedial phase documents, and we have separate inspectors for the RIO document. But the inspectors for the phase documents, you can get different inspectors each time. It's random how it comes up. We are, the inspector will put into Ngems where we have our key document remarks, and we'll put in, you know, what the comments are. We have another window that we put in where comments are, and the earlier phase, the earlier inspectors put the information in, and the later inspectors know to look back to see what was said before.
Okay.
So everything's in Ngems.
Everything's changed. I know there was a comment made a while ago at a course, and I don't know if people are doing it or what your thoughts are, but people had said, you know, like, and you already get 1,000-page documents, but if you're going to submit your RA, okay, and your RAP application, attach your RI to that, because then everything's in one place for the reviewer.
If you have already submitted your RI through the portal, we have it. If
Right.
you're talking about an RI that was done in 1992, we would appreciate it. Because, and especially if your RA is based on information that was done in the RI phase. So that, you know, you did this delineation sampling in your RI. So when we look at the RA, we want to understand what was done before. But if it was submitted through the portal, we have it. No need to resubmit it. Just keep what it would be helpful is if you reference in the RA, this is the sampling that we did in the RI, so that we don't have to go back and look for it.
Gotcha. Okay. Again, it goes back to referencing the information, and that might even be something up front in the report that you may, in executive summary, highlight that this is in the document if you need to review it.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's all helpful.
Okay. And I am seeing some questions come in. I will address them. I want to jump into you know, our last two topics here. You know, one is I had asked you, I said, so we have the opportunity to get out some information to LSRPs about what are current common errors that the department is seeing, whether it be a PA, SI, RI, RA, REO. You had said you were going to survey your staff a little.
I did.
So I'm going to give you a few minutes so that we can see what are some of the common errors that the department's seeing.
So I have this outlined for each area. A PA, they lump AOCs together like former site operations instead of identifying each area of concern. You need to identify each area of concern all the time. And if they were issued an NFA or an RAO, then you put that as the status on the SID, but don't lump things together. Again, for the SI, our problem is again with the SID. We're not getting all the information regarding regulated tanks. Regulated tanks are tanks that we have to report information to EPA. So it's really important that you get all of that correctly, and we have the information we need. RI, receptors are not being addressed. And we don't look at the impacts of potential impacts to receptors. You have to do them. The door-to-door survey, do the well search. you have to do the VI investigation and eco evaluation. All of those have to be done. And if they're not done, your RI is incomplete. For groundwater, offsite groundwater claims are an issue because we don't have enough information. We didn't get all the up gradient delineation wasn't complete. The concentration gradient doesn't support it. We just need more information and we're not getting it. For RAOs, again, reconciling the tanks, the regulated tanks and the incident numbers prior to issuing your RAO. The scope of remediation is not accurate, but luckily for everybody, we will be giving training on RAOs coming up at the end of November. So hopefully these issues would be addressed there. If an RAO is being issued for a restrictive remedial action type that applies to some AOCs or the entire site, it gets confusing and people aren't doing that right. Soil permits, the most common technical deficiency is not addressing EPH in soils over the product threshold. The most common administrative deficiencies, as I said earlier, is using the wrong model document for financial assurance. And groundwater permits, the most common two deficiencies are incomplete delineation and no decreasing trend for contaminants of concern. Basically, M&A is not occurring, but we get it anyway. And a close third is that the door-to-door survey was incomplete and not submitted. So that's a problem in the RI, and we're still seeing it in the RA phase for the permit application. And then bicerts, unpaid annual fees, contact update form. They're updating information on the bicert form instead of submitting the contact change form. Groundwater bicerts forms are not filled out completely. Site maps are illegible. And contamination is downgrading of the CEA, but they're not coming in for a mod to address that.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So there's enough there. I want to hit a couple of them on the because you said one that I hadn't heard before on the biennial cert, the fees not being paid. Now, when that is getting addressed, is that getting addressed to the LSRP or is that going back to the PRCR?
Should be going to both. We would let the LSRP know that the fee is not being paid. We usually, on all of our emails, we try to, as long as we have the information, we send it to, regarding the permits, we send it to the permittees as well as the LSRP.
Yeah, because I know that I've seen a little, and I spent a lot of time with Alan and Sarah on a lot of my clients, but that there has been a little lag during the past 20 months between checks going through and, with Treasury and the department and where mail goes and all those different things. But if I'm assuming that if they're late, they're late. And if there's a way to provide that documentation, they can at that time.
Yep.
Yeah, of course. So, and then the other thing I was going to say is, so you are seeing that deficiencies are carrying through.
Yep, some of them.
So the correction is not being done. Okay, and
Delineation and receptors are the most common deficiency in both the RI and RA phase.
So the two most important components of a permit. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but are they issues where the LSRPs may not be using their professional judgment on delineation or documenting something on delineation, or is it clearly that sites are just not delineated?
Both.
Both. Okay. Fair answer. And on the receptor side, do you find that most of the data ends up being there and they did the work and just didn't submit it, or it's just something that's being completely overlooked?
I believe it's more often than not, we are pulling back the RI complete date.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Have you seen a change in how people are doing biennial certs? I mean, personally, I used to think like, we did the biennial cert, we did a little report, we did the form, we submitted it, and I never heard anything. And now I hear a lot more than I did previously.
Previously, under the prior bureau chief, the bicerts were reviewed by the permit writer when they would get in another, get in a mod or a transfer change. They would then go back and pull the bicerts and look at everything. But they didn't have anybody who was specifically assigned to looking at the bicerts. That has changed. We now have a full-time employee looking at the groundwater bicerts and a second person who I think now technically it might be two people working part-time on the soil bicerts, trying to train someone else in it. But there is definitely we have it assigned as a task to somebody. So every bicert is getting looked at in real time when it is submitted. Okay, good.
And again, another question that we didn't talk about, but just to throw out there, bicerts are due on a specific date in a permit. Okay. Sometimes either chasing down signatures, or I know the properties have changed and all these different things and permit. I mean, if you're going to be a little late on your bicert, okay, that doesn't happen to be on the extension form. Is it something you notify the department of? Is it something just get it done and get it submitted in? What's your off the record recommendation?
This is being taped and recorded, so this is not off the record. My recommendation is it depends on what you need. If you, for example, you have your groundwater bicert is due in a month, you want to go out and you need to take another round of groundwater samples to comply, and we get 3 feet of snow and you can't find your wells, you're not sampling right now. Okay, submit your bicert with the information that you have, and next time be more careful and try to get your sampling so that this doesn't happen next time. But submit the information as you have it with the sampling data that you have, saying you're going to sample it as soon as you can, and you'll submit it in the next bicert. Don't hold up that if you have, let's say you were supposed to sample you were supposed to sample 2 times a year, submit the 3 rounds that you have. Don't wait till you can get out for that 4th round. Submit that 4th round in your next bicert. So if you have information, submit what you have. If you're waiting for a signature, get the signature. If you're, a couple of days late, nobody cares. We have yet to hone our system in that well that we notice that you're a few days late.
Okay. So, but what I'm hearing, just to summarize, is you're better submitting what you have with an explanation as to why it's not complete than holding off until the snow melts, sampling, and then submitting 3 to 5 months late.
Absolutely. The only reason why I say hold on, get your signatures, is that you're not making it through BCAN without all the right signatures on it.
Right. Right. And this again goes to BCAN, and then once it's administratively complete, makes its way to your group.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Good. Somebody had asked a question. Can we get a list of those common deficiencies? I mean, my response back, and you can correct me, is we are taping this, so you can go back and share this this video. But also, I know that at a couple of the recent training courses, you've brought this up again, and so there's a history.
There's nothing new that I said in that list of common deficiencies. These are things that in the SID training, we talked about how you identify your AOCs, and we talked about the UST registration being very important. We will be discussing that again in the RAO training that's coming up in November. Anything that I said on the bicerts, that was in the bicert training, that's nothing new. I can say that 100 times. Marty hates the maps that are not legible. It makes her crazy. Everything that I have there, we have talked about, RIs not being complete and delineated. Like that's, we need that to be done. Your delineation has to be, you can extrapolate in the RI phase, but you can't ignore your receptors in the RI phase. Those have to be addressed.
This question comes up to me probably 2 to 3 times a month. Okay. If I've issued a limited restricted REO and I have a permit and I terminate my permit because the world, the moons and everything is aligned properly, and I've gotten to that point and I terminate that permit, do I need to issue an unrestricted REO at that point?
So the answer to this question was again given in the bicert training as well as the permit training that we gave a few years ago. And I think Mark Fisher in the Q&A part that we had answered this beautifully. So from the department's perspective, absolutely not. Once you issue your REO is your REO. You add your REO with the permit termination, and together that's an unrestricted use. Do you want to issue a new unrestricted use REO? We don't know the current conditions of the site. So a PASI would be needed to be conducted because I don't know if there are any new areas of concern at the site, and neither do you. So we only know the conditions back to when the original REO was issued. So if a new REO is needed, you have to do the PASI.
That was an interesting spin on it. I hadn't thought of that. I was actually just thinking the point that how do you issue a new REO, an unrestricted REO, when the case number was closed when you issued the limited restricted REO?
And that's part of our problem. So you're out of our system once you issue the REO. You come back in with the PASI, you get back into our system, and we then you have a way of tracking it. We have a way of tracking it and billing it.
Of course. We had to get that in there. Is there a way to check and track, this is one of the questions, remedial action permit application submittals? And then is there consideration from the department to have a data miner report that's available to see remedial action permit assignments in progress?
So I gave this presentation in one of the CVP shrag meetings. It's posted, so it would have to have been early 2019 would be my guess. One of those shrag meetings where I explained the convoluted way of using data miner to find the permit information. It's not on any of our current reports because it uses the permit module is different than the rest of what SRP uses. And that decision was made long before I got there. But there is a way of doing it. And there is a report that is posted. I did a PowerPoint going through the different steps on how you can get that information. Once it makes it through BCANE, it will show up as a site, and then you can see who it's assigned to, where the site is. If it's assigned to Gary or one of the mics, it probably hasn't been reviewed yet. If then you'll see it then get reassigned to a permit writer, you'll know who's reviewing it. And you will see more, you can look at it, who's assigned to it. And I put that information in that PowerPoint.
Okay.
Do I remember that off the top of my head? I don't.
No. What course is that from? Do you remember?
It was a CVP shrag meeting that I did.
Okay. So it's probably, I'll go back and look and see if I can provide it. Now, once the permit's issued, and biennial certs are done, would that same report continue with the biennial certs, or that's nowhere to be seen?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, I just thought of it. So now,
Oh, somebody put it down there. Yeah,
Oh, good.
it is searched by category pending permit progress report. That is correct,
perfect.
because you have to look through the permitting aspect of it, not through the SRP aspect of it.
Actually, I love David Moore. I'm going to jump to David Morris's question here. He's like, any update on the replacement of Ngems? I always love saying that Ngems was created by the same company that brought us Obamacare online. So always wondered if that would ever get replaced. Is that getting replaced?
I have heard that. I am not involved in that process.
This is an interesting question, and I think I know the answer. So there are times where LSRPs change on a property. And the first thing that we have to do when we become the new LSRP, aside from a site visit, because that's in the rules, by the way, anybody who's out there, you really have to look at the site, understand what's going on, understand the remediation that was done, because you're now accepting that as part of your product. And a lot of times we create a summary. Okay. Interesting question that's here is, when we submit our next milestone report, is there any interest in the DEP to see that summary that we've created for the history of the site that may address the deficiencies that we've uncovered?
Any information that you have that explains what you do on a site is useful information to the department. It might address some questions or concerns that we have regarding your professional judgment about why something was done. So it's good information, and it adds to the record of the case.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Again, it goes back to the more information, the better.
Absolutely. Tell us what you're thinking. It makes us understand why what you're doing is protective.
Question was, we hear that there's either guidance for wraps for active industrial sites coming out. Is there anything in the works? Do you know anything about that?
There is no plan for that. The guidance that we're working on right now with our wrap stakeholders, we're working on the soil wrap guidance and the groundwater wrap guidance. That's what's on the table right now.
This has been a hot topic for LSRP, so I just want to make sure that we have some clarification on it. If the LSRP and the PRCR believe they're not going to make a time frame, okay, they have an obligation to ask for an extension from the department.
Yes.
Okay.
And to let the PRCR know. Right.
So if it's a regulatory time frame, once again, 30 days prior, the form is submitted to the department, but technically by rule, it's approved, because I think the LSRP is the one who has that power.
Correct. Okay. That's my understanding.
Yep.
Raphael is your time frame expert.
Okay. When it comes to a mandatory time frame, we talked about that 60 days prior. Mm-hmm. The department has to approve that.
Okay. That is my understanding.
But the LSRP independently, because of the board rules, has to notify the PRCR and the department in writing that they're going to potentially miss, in their independent professional judgment, a mandatory time frame. And that is a form completely separate from the extension form.
I'll take your word for that.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And then I think that's important to be clear, though there is some conversation right now between the board and the department, because there may have been some confusion, because if you're applying to the department for an extension of the mandatory time frame, aren't you telling the department that you're not going to make the mandatory time frame? It's somewhat logical, but there are two separate forms currently because they serve two separate animals and purposes. But that is something under discussion. But just to be clear, as we sit here today, there are two separate forms. So if you're an LSRP and your client is going to miss, in your independent judgment, a mandatory time frame, you have to complete the form, that covers your derriere. That has been the number one violation at the board this past year. I'm looking at some other, I don't know what that means. Okay, go on. A quick question for you, though we did not discuss this, and you can tell me you don't want to answer it. Right, since you are also the rules guru at the department right now with the changes in rules, do you have an idea of when there could be a proposal out?
It is a we're looking in 2022 right now. We're hoping to have another stakeholder meeting in 2021. I'm running out of time, but that is our goal. And then to have the rule proposed in 2022.
So 2022.
Next year.
Next year. That's next year. That's like soon though. You know, somebody just asked for clarification, you know, real quick. Again, when you're asking for an extension of a time frame, you're asking the department. So there is a form to request an extension of a time frame, regulatory as well as mandatory. When it comes to what an LSRP's requirements are, an LSRP under the board rules, if they feel in their independent professional judgment they're not going to make a regulatory time frame, they must notify their client. I believe it says in writing. I would recommend it's in writing so you have documentation. If it's a mandatory time frame, you have to notify the department and your client. And there is a form for that because there's a form for everything. So to have that. David Morris followed up and said, do you have any idea what quarter in 2022?
No, and 2022 is my goal, and it's nice to have goals, I was told. Our goal at one point was 2021, things changed. So hopefully 2022.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to go through the emails I've gotten to see if there's any other additional questions. That's that. If you were using words, no, you talked about that already. We talked about that already. I think we talked about this. Is there a review time? I think we touched with that. Is there a review time for any component reviews of an RI? Somebody had received it. It took a few years.
It is a component of an RI may be the review. Not all reviews are real-time reviews. Sometimes an inspector will check a review, but say this should be pushed to the end when the RA is done because this might be addressed in the RA. So you might get a comment on something that was done in the RI because we noticed when the RA was done, you haven't completed your delineation of something.
Okay, good. Somebody asked which rules is the department reviewing for changes?
So it's tech rules and ARCs. I mean, there are lots of other rules, but the ones I am responsible for are the tech rules and ARCs. Okay.
I know the board is in the process, and you know, and if you're an LSRP, this coming Monday, the board is going to start talking about the changes that are potentially proposed in the board rules. You can always view online. Interesting question I never thought of. Once LSRPs, once you issue the REO, you know, if the site changes LSRP, that doesn't change in data miner. Is there anywhere to find that on the outside world? I know you can see it in Ngems, but when it's a remedial action permit.
I believe that the LSRP case report gives out what you can still look for PI and you can still see who's listed that's associated. We would put if there is a new LSRP that comes in with the permit, we would change that in Ngems and you should be able to detect that for a PI. It's my understanding.
You know, a comment came up here, it would be beneficial for LSRPs if there was one list of all the historic reports. I know there used to be in data miner. They kind of got rid of that.
I don't understand the question.
So we used to see in data miner all of the reports ever listed in time. Now we just kind of see the most recent ones since 2009, and the historic ones are kind of gone. You still see them in Ngems on your side. We don't see them on our side. Used to be an old report, but that's gone now when they did some updates.
Okay. That is again outside of my purview.
Yeah, I know you don't handle data miner.
No,
in Ngems.
not anymore.
Yep. We're at 9:30. I want to be very cognizant of everybody's time. I'm sure you have another meeting, probably to head off at 9:35. Closing comments. 713 LSRPs. We still we're about 13,000 known contaminated sites in New Jersey, and that's because it goes up and down. In your words or less, you've done this a long time. Program successful?
I think it is. I think most of the LSRPs are doing a good job. Most of the LSRPs are submitting correct information. I think there's still a few that are wanting the department to write 14-page deficiency letters so they know exactly what to do, are asking the permit writers, where should I put wells and can we have meetings? I would just want to remind those LSRPs that's not our role anymore. But if you do have any technical questions, to set up a tech consult, we would be happy to go over stuff with you before you submit the permit application, so that when you do submit the application, you have everything right.
And who would that request for technical consult go to?
Depending on your issue, you can send it to Gary Sanderson, Atwood Davis, Marianne Kuserk, or Kevin Schick, and they will make sure that all the right people are at the, any of them, if that receive a tech consult request, will make sure that the right people are there.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much. Lynn, I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for tuning in, and everybody who tuned in today. Still a lot of work to be done in New Jersey, and we're getting through it. Continuing professional education services. Check us out online, CPESNJ.com. Our next hot topic, by the way, is the 15th of October on environmental justice in New Jersey. Ray Papperman leading the way with the cast of characters. It's going to be a good presentation. So, Lynn, thanks for your time again today, and everyone stay well.
You're welcome.
Okay, take care, everyone.